In 1983, WWVA's Jamboree USA published a 50th anniversary book. This book is now out of publication and cannot be reprinted. The book has become so sought after in the past few years that we have put the book on videotape. In addition to the book, we have added more photos from the early days of Jamboree USA. So sit back and enjoy.
The birth of a legend. Born of humble beginnings in the heartland of America, the void she filled at birth made her fathers know that she would grow and mature to a ripe old age. In December of 1932, the voice that was to be heard by millions found its roots in the dreams of three men who laid the foundation for what today is known as Jamboree USA, the second oldest live radio broadcast in the proudest of American traditions. The program department of radio station WWVA wanted to develop a program of entertainment for its listeners. They concluded that an informal broadcast should be a part of the station's program scheduling. Since it was generally felt that Saturday was the stay-up late night, it was decided that a live radio show would be lighthearted and full of fun. With winter's chilling winds blowing snow across the Ohio River Valley, WWVA's managing director George W. Smith, program director Howard Donahoe, and Paul J. Miller conceived the idea for a carefree, fun-filled program of down-home music. They were daring enough to plan their program as a late-night radio show that would go on the air at midnight. Because of the informal and fun-loving atmosphere they had hoped to build, the name Jamboree was a natural for their show. It was an original, and it became the world's original WWVA Jamboree. That eventful meeting in December 1932 created a broadcast, but not yet a stage show as we know it today. On January 7, 1933, the first Jamboree broadcast was a mere studio presentation. What came out over the airwaves were the first cries of a child that would someday have its voice lifted to the heavens and carried throughout the entire northeastern United States and into Canada. That first memorable broadcast featured Ginger Snap and Sparky, Elmer Crow, the Wandering Minstrel, Fred Craddock's Happy Five, who were later dubbed the Symphonic Cornhuskers, Felix Adams, WWVA announcer and harmonica whiz, Paul J. Miller, and Howard Donahoe as Master of Ceremonies. The first show was without an outstanding star. People didn't seem to mind. The early Jamboree performers lifted the spirits of their listeners and filled their lives with song. Soon, thousands of listeners flooded the radio station with requests for tickets to come to the studios on Saturday nights to watch the live radio broadcasts. With the popularity of the first Jamboree radio shows increasing each week, the studios were soon unable to accommodate the large crowds that were flocking to Wheeling to see the Jamboree. The nearby Capitol Theater seemed an ideal setting for the stage productions that were to come out of those first few informal radio broadcasts. However, the theater was already being used for Saturday night movies. WWVA officials did the next best thing. They booked the Capitol Theater for Jamboree shows to begin at midnight, after the movies. The first Jamboree held in the theater filled the Capitol with music and with thousands of Jamboree fans on April 1st, 1933. There were people everywhere. They came in wagons, on trucks, and in trains. They poured into the theater. There were people sitting in the aisles, on steps, and any place that could be found. Because of the late night starting hour, it was agreed to charge an admission of only 25 cents. The shows were billed the greatest show on the air for a quarter. There were 3,266 Jamboree fans at that first stage performance. Another 1,000 were turned away. That April 1st treat was the beginning of a tradition. A star had been born. In that humble beginning, as is true all these years later, there was something about the show that attracted large audiences. It was difficult for the theater owners to understand the magic of the music, but it continued. And soon, Jamboree fans were outnumbering the moviegoers by 2 to 1. Theater management first thought that the informal presentation would be an April Fool's joke. Instead, it became the most popular presentation that the theater gave. The Jamboree's reputation grew, and with it came larger audiences. The first days of the Jamboree featured homegrown talent. Then November 11, 1933, when the live Jamboree broadcasts were slightly more than 8 months old, two entertainers came to WWVA who were to change the entire concept of the show. Prior to that time, the Jamboree featured lively foot-stomping music. The arrival of Cowboy Loy and Just Plain John, with their down-to-earth appeal and humorous rapport with their audiences, brought thousands of new listeners home to the Jamboree. Those early days were without the professionalism that was to come with maturity. In fact, most of the artists had never appeared before a live audience when they took to the stage of the Jamboree. Like Cowboy and John, not professionals by most standards, yet lovable stars in their own right, the Jamboree performers could sing and talk in a homespun manner that people hungered for. When first invited to appear on the show, Cowboy Loy refused because he had a problem remembering the words to songs. In those early days of the new show, it was unthought of to use a music stand on stage. This was quite a change from what the entertainers were used to when performing on radio. Cowboy had no choice. It was either a music stand in front of him or dead air when he forgot the words to a song. Luckily, the audiences didn't mind at all. Cowboy Loy and Just Plain John found instant success in Wheeling. Their audiences loved the honesty they presented on stage, and their good neighbor appeal was drawing more and more fans to the Jamboree. Who were these fans that were turning a broadcasting experiment into a success? WWVA's Paul J. Miller came up with a new idea to meet them. The Prowlin' Mike was born. It later became the Inquiring Mike and gave Jamboree fans the chance to send greetings and personal messages back home. More importantly, however, it showed the Jamboree and radio station management that the fans were driving hundreds of miles just to see the show they had been listening to over WWVA on Saturday nights. The idea of the Inquiring Mike has lasted throughout the years. It has been handed down from one generation of Jamboree fans to another. Modern-day warm-up shows have given thousands of Jamboree visitors the chance to be heard back home, wherever that may be. The early success of the show was not without problems, however. In February of 1934, the Jamboree had to find a new home. Theatrical schedule changes at the Capitol prompted a move to the Victoria Theater, which is also in downtown Wheeling. The Victoria was a small theater, too small for the huge Jamboree crowds, and 2 weeks after the first move, the show moved again, this time to the Virginia Theater on 12th Street. While the Virginia was much larger than the Victoria, it was also inadequate for the large following that was building for the Jamboree. On May 19, 1934, the show moved back to its first home. With roots firmly planted in Wheeling and the Capitol Theater once again, the Jamboree was soon to learn of its ever-expanding audiences. Jamboree's popularity was far-reaching. In the summer of 1934, a listener from London, England, sent WWVA a home recording of a portion of one of the Jamboree shows. Clearly inscribed on an aluminum disc was the Jamboree theme song. The early years were filled with experiments. Each attempt at something new met with larger theater and radio audiences. Names like Silver Yodelin' Bill Jones, who set a record for the longest yodel, and who also appeared in rib-tickling skits with Pid Hawkins, with Tommy Knott, Push 'em Up Tony, and his accordion, Blaine Smith, were becoming famous household names because of the Jamboree. Cap, Andy, and Flip became well known for their comedy act, particularly Flip's long red underwear gags. Tony and Dominique were probably two of the Jamboree's wildest comedians. They would do anything for a laugh. Some of the hard falls they took on the Jamboree in 1935 would qualify them for feature spots on modern-day wrestling shows. Back then, there was a saying that anything can and probably will happen on the Jamboree. The Jamboree audiences never knew what to expect, but they always had a good time when they attended a performance. During the early years, each Jamboree had its own theme. There was a Goblin Night Jamboree, a Country Store Jamboree, a Bowery Jamboree, and many others. Denver Darling, another early Jamboree favorite, was featured in a series of circus and carnival jamborees in 1935. On April 1st, 1935, The Jamboree celebrated its second birthday with its 104th performance. The audience that night numbered 3,305 fans. They were treated to the music of the Tennessee Hilltoppers, whose three unique instruments were a carpenter's saw, a bass horn, and a piece of lead pipe. Also on that show were Bluegrass Roy and one of the pioneers of early morning and late night broadcasting on WWVA, Denver Darling, Hugh Cross, the Smoky Mountain Boy, Shug Fisher, and a cast of Jamboree regulars. The Jamboree's early success was spreading more than country music. It was promoting the idea that maybe other radio stations could begin duplicating what was being done in Wheeling, West Virginia over WWVA. Other similar radio shows were developed, but none came close to competing. The crowds continued flocking to Wheeling in ever-growing numbers. Special transit cars and trains ran up and down the Ohio River Valley, bringing country music fans to Wheeling for a Saturday night of Jamboree entertainment. Entertainment it was. It helped people forget their cares. Their troubles were left behind as they traveled to the rolling West Virginia hills for the Jamboree's live performances. This created something new for Wheeling City leaders to look for. The entertainment dollar was important to the economy, and it prospered because of the Jamboree and the fans it brought to Wheeling. The hometown folks are usually the last to accept the success or fame of their own, while city fathers and sophisticated Wheelingites were a little reluctant to admit that those hillbillies were actually providing worthwhile entertainment. They couldn't close their eyes to the fact that thousands of people were pouring into Wheeling to see the Jamboree and spending money. A lot of money. Today, as in those years, hotels and motels within a 50-mile radius of Wheeling realize economic benefits from the Jamboree. Restaurants do a land office business on weekends. Souvenir shops and clothing stores also realize increased sales when the busloads of Jamboree fans pull into town. WWVA already knew the importance of the Jamboree, and they proved it in 1935 when the Georgie Porgy Gang, which included Hugh Cross, Shug Fisher, Ray Gully, Tommy Pritchett, and Ted Cray, asked their listening audience to send in the box tops from a breakfast cereal that was sponsoring a portion of the Jamboree they were appearing on. More than 15,000 pieces of mail were received in 3 days. There was no doubt about it. The Jamboree was making its mark on the entertainment world. It was establishing itself as an important business venture. More importantly, it was here to stay. On June 1st, 1935, the daddy of the Jamboree, Howard Donahoe, bid farewell to the Jamboree and to WWVA. For more than 2 years, he had been master of ceremonies of the show. His influence on the Jamboree was more than just that of an MC. Donahoe had been a driving force, a major influence on the Jamboree. He was the guiding hand that led to success. When Howard Donahoe announced his plans to leave the show, Walter Patterson, one of the Jamboree's regular entertainers and Donahoe's replacement as MC, arranged a farewell Jamboree for him. It ended with the cast and audience fondly singing Auld Lang Syne to a true pioneer. As the new year of 1936 emerged on the scene, plans were being made for changes at the Jamboree. The major change was a move to the old Wheeling Market Auditorium. Having grown accustomed to plush theater seats, the Jamboree audiences were being treated to something new, hard, wooden, folding chairs to sit on. Nobody was sure just how they would react, but the Jamboree show was what the people were falling in love with. While love may not always be blind, perhaps it does soften the hard times. In any event, the country music fans who had grown accustomed to enjoying their music Wheeling style seemed to like the new arrangement better. The theater restrictions were gone. Fans were able to eat popcorn and peanuts and could take their soda and coffee right to their seats. The Jamboree was really a down-home kind of show now. It was literally closer to the hearts of the fans, too, because of the way the Jamboree stage was situated in the auditorium. The fans could almost reach out and touch their favorite entertainer. Another important change in the move to the Market Auditorium was that the Jamboree no longer had to wait for the movies to end before the live show began. With added time available, a second show was scheduled for each Saturday. another tradition in the making. Soon, fans of all ages who were attracted to the Jamboree were able to attend performances. Spring of 1936 saw plenty of activity for the Jamboree with its move into a new home. It also brought disaster in the form of the worst flood ever to hit the city of Wheeling and the first cancellation of a Jamboree performance. On Saturday, March 21st, 1936, cowbell-ringing country music fans were replaced with grief-stricken homeless people as row after row of mattresses for those forced out of their homes by the raging Ohio River replaced the seats usually reserved for Jamboree fans. Temporary homes were sought in and around Wheeling as the mighty Ohio escaped from its normal boundaries. As floodwaters washed away the spirit of spring, WWVA was the only reliable communication link. The entire Jamboree gang turned out to the station and established WWVA as headquarters for emergency bulletins. Cowboy Loy, serving in rescue boats, was called Admiral Pack, Pack being his last name. The Jamboree's own Tex Harrison spent weeks with the Red Cross establishing and running the first relief station on Wheeling Island. But as floodwaters rise, they also recede, and once they had subsided and the area residents were able to return to their homes, the Market Auditorium was once again readied for the Jamboree. On April 4th, 1936, the Jamboree was dedicated to the Red Cross solicitation of funds to help those who had fallen victim to the flood. The year 1936 also brought other firsts to the Jamboree pages of history, including the first outdoor Jamboree ever held. This forerunner of the current Jamboree in the Hills was held in the Wheeling High School football stadium and drew a crowd of over 5,000 fans who jammed the grandstand. That year also provided an interesting fact for the nation's history. Democrats sing louder than Republicans. The 1936 presidential race between Franklin D. Roosevelt and Alf Landon got people into the spirit of the campaign. Those in the Jamboree audiences were asked to sing for their favorite candidates. First, the Democrats would sing. Then the Republicans would sing the same songs. A control engineer would measure the volume of the singing. The poll was right, because the Democrats not only proved to be the loudest singers, but their candidate won, too. Soon, winter was fading into memory. Thoughts turned once more to the freshness of spring, this time, however, without the icy fingers of winter that blew terrible storms into Wheeling and brought about the dreadful flood of 1936. This 1937 spring brought more youth to the Jamboree family. A member named Doc Williams, who is still going strong today, is often referred to as the Jamboree's Goodwill Ambassador. Doc Williams and the Border Riders, Brother Cy, Sunflower, Curly Sims, and Hamilton Rawhide Fincher joined the WWVA Jamboree in May of 1937. Big Slim, the lone cowboy, joined the group in 1938, replacing Rawhide, and Doc's wife, Chickie, became a member of the group in 1947. For more than 45 years, Doc and Chickie have maintained a close association with the Jamboree, contributing time, talent, and unending energy to its promotion and success. Throughout its history, the Jamboree has been known as a family-oriented show. Doc and Chickie Williams regularly exhibited their strong belief in this style of entertainment by featuring their three daughters, Peeper, Punkin, and Pooch, in their shows. Carrying the country music message to thousands of fans throughout the U.S. and Canada, Doc and Chickie Williams have dedicated themselves to the Jamboree. That dedication has kept them Jamboree favorites throughout their long career. Doc takes great pride in the fact that he is the oldest living member of the Jamboree still performing. Perhaps the highlight of his career came on December 11, 1971, when then-Governor Arch A. Moore proclaimed him West Virginia's official country music ambassador of goodwill. There can be no question that Doc and Chickie Williams are two names that are synonymous with the Jamboree. Their lives symbolize the very essence of the Jamboree tradition. Today, they continue to carry on that proud tradition in regular concert and public television appearances. Along about the time that Doc Williams and the Border Riders started appearing on the Jamboree, other big names started coming to Wheeling too. Not only names like Doc and Chicky and Big Slim, the Lone Cowboy, but also Gertrude Miller, Jack Dunnigan, Grandpa Jones, Slim Cox, the Flying X-Boys, Elmer Crow, Pete Castle, and Shorty Fincher and his Cotton Pickers were becoming legendary with country music fans because of the contribution they were making to the Jamboree. New names brought new crowds into the Jamboree fold. By 1939, the world's original WWVA Jamboree had reached the half-million mark in attendance. Who would have dreamed, even in the age of adventure during the 1930s, that a radio program could reach the heights that the Jamboree had? Its popularity increasing regularly, the Jamboree stars were soon on tour. In the early 40s, the tours became more popular, and more names were added to the cast of regular entertainers. The first Jamboree to be staged outside of Wheeling came during April of 1939. The Jamboree gang traveled to 6 towns in Pennsylvania and Ohio, giving performances to large crowds. In each town, everyone was amazed at the reception they were receiving. Capacity crowds were becoming common as the tour continued. After the first successful tour, an annual WWVA Jamboree tour seemed appropriate. And that may have become another tradition if Uncle Sam hadn't stepped in, calling a halt to the proceedings. The war was on, and it became impossible to plan future tours. At the start of the war years, so soon after the Great Depression, people were looking for something to lift their spirits. The Jamboree provided it in the person of Crazy Elmer, a new member whose antics left his audiences laughing in the aisles. Crazy Elmer, also known as Smiley Sutter, was born in East Hartford, Connecticut, but made Wheeling his home. As a country music comedian, Crazy Elmer held the enviable reputation of king of the country comics. In 1938, as Smiley Sutter, he won the West Virginia State Yodeling Championship. Making people laugh was what he did best. He won the hearts of millions of fans throughout the United States and Canada. His own brand of hilarious comedy made Crazy Elmer an instant success on the Jamboree. During the Jamboree's 8th anniversary show on April 1941, the audience was in stitches, laughing so hard they cried as Crazy Elmer and his 1170 Awkward Squad attempted to put on a drill according to the official manual of arms. For Crazy Elmer and his squad, the Army drill was all in fun. But it was not funny in the early 1940s. Service life was fast becoming a serious reality for the staffs of Jamboree and WWVA. The first to get the call was the Jamboree's Master of Ceremonies, Texas Bill Thomas. Selected to take his place as MC was WWVA announcer Lou Clausen, who was right at home on the stage because he had in earlier years traveled the country with dance bands. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the Inquiring Mike feature had to be dropped from the show in cooperation with a national defense ruling that advised against broadcasts that made a microphone available to the public. The Inquiring Mike had aired continuously for 6 years and was replaced during the early war years with a song fest called Keep 'em Singing, which was an instant success. Broadcasting, a trade magazine for the radio industry, offered a special recognition for Keep 'em Singing as a morale builder for a country so deeply affected by the Depression and the war. The war brought about other changes at the Jamboree, too. Many of the stars and men of WWVA left home for duty in the armed forces. With so many of the men serving their country, the time had come for the girls of the Jamboree to come into their own. They were Shirley Barker, Millie Wayne, Honey Davis, Sunflower, and many others who really hit it big during the war years. Included in the audiences for the Jamboree girls to sing were men in uniform, all of whom were admitted free to the show, regardless of the branch of service. The war did something that only a serious flood had done until that time. Although attendance at the Jamboree shows was still holding up in spite of wartime gasoline rationing, it was decided in order to encourage conservation of gasoline by the public, the theater performance of the WWVA Jamboree should be discontinued for the duration of the war. The last show until after the war came on December 12, 1942. Prior to that, 930,339 people had seen the Jamboree shows since they began on April 1st, 1933. The Jamboree show continued during the war years of 1943 through 1945, but only on the airwaves. There were no live theater broadcasts or public shows. Even then, the Jamboree Gang was showing its popularity in time of troubles. During 1944 alone, more than 204,000 pieces of commercial mail were pulled into Wheeling by the Jamboree. Fans from all over the country were hearing the Jamboree, and they were paying attention to the products being advertised. In one series of programs, more than 1 million baby chicks were sold by mail order. Sadness struck the Jamboree on May 9, 1946, when managing director George W. Smith died. Smith's foresight is credited for the use of country music on WWVA, which built the Jamboree's continued popularity. Obviously, the Jamboree was doing its part to keep up the morale at home. Soldiers stationed throughout the United States were finding the Jamboree broadcasts a great spirit booster as well. Finally, the war was over. The men of WWVA and the stars of Jamboree USA returned. On July 13, 1946, live theater performances of the Jamboree were resumed. February 8, 1947 is another important date that the Jamboree will never forget. On that night, Miss Laverne Howell was the star of the evening when she bought a ticket and became the 1 millionth visitor to Jamboree USA. The Jamboree was becoming a national institution. The old had been accepting its ways, and the young were also embracing the Jamboree spirit. But unlike some institutions, the Jamboree was a young, living, breathing tradition. It became more invigorating to its fans every passing year. As it gained in age, it grew in spirit. Soon that spirit spread to the popularity of a Jamboree newcomer, Hawkshaw Hawkins, Mr. 11 yards of personality. Hawkshaw Hawkins captivated Jamboree audiences for many years. He was what men wanted to be. He was what women adored. He was a spirit, a man, a life, a meaning. He was the Jamboree, and he remained that way until his untimely death in an airplane crash in 1963. While the memory of Hawkshaw Hawkins keeps smiling over the Jamboree as it passes its 50th birthday, there were dozens of others who stood out on the Jamboree stage, passing their gifts of music on to thousands of those in the audiences, and millions of listeners over WWVA. No Jamboree roster will ever be complete. It is ever expanding. Today, Doc and Chicky Williams keep the tradition alive. They stand on the Jamboree stage in the memories of the greats like Lone Pine, Sunflower, Big Slim, the Lone Cowboy, Hugh Cross, Hiram Hayseed, Smokey Pleacher, Cowboy Phil, and Stoney Cooper, who performed in those early years of Jamboree and have since passed on. In the middle years of Jamboree, such luminaries as Red Sovine, Slim Carter, Cy Williams, Kenny Roberts, Roy Scott, Jimmy Martin, and the Lubin Brothers all carried the Jamboree banner proudly. Dusty Owens sang in the middle 50s, as did Lee Moore, George Morgan, the Osborne Brothers, and Rusty and Doug Kershaw. Before them, there were Don Reno, Red Smiley, Floyd Tillman. Ken Curtis, also known as Festus on TV's Gunsmoke, performed on the Jamboree stage, as did Hank Snow, Mac Wiseman, the Sunshine Boys, and the Blue Ridge Quartet. Their names are enshrined in Jamboree's history. Blaine Smith, the Tweedy Brothers, Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper, Gertrude Miller, Ray Myers, the Armless Musician, Jimmy and Jesse, Elton Britt, Donna Darlene, Shorty Fincher, Billy Grammer, Lone Pine and Betty Cody, Toby Shroud, Reed Dunn, Hard Rock Gunter, Grandpa Jones. The list is virtually endless. The Jamboree memory brings back Lou Clausen, Dolph Hewitt, WWVA's Pretty Boy, Froggy Cortez, the boy with the funny disposition, Chief Red Hawk, Johnny Hill, and Quarantine, the ugliest man in radio, and Marion Martin were favorites in their day. It was their day that led the Jamboree onto an unforgettable trip through time. They were some of the pioneers, the forerunners who sang and picked and charmed their way into the hearts of yesterday's country music fans and paved the way for the popularity enjoyed today by the superstars of the country music industry. Superstars such as Alabama, Ronnie Milsap, Barbara Mandrell, the Oak Ridge Boys, the Statler Brothers, Charlie Pride, Johnny Cash, Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, and George Jones, who graced the stage of the Capitol Music Hall each and every Saturday night, and whose music reaches millions over WWVA radio. If there were growing pains, the Jamboree wasn't showing them. The first 20 years brought more than 1,750,000 fans to Wheeling for Jamboree performances. Countless other millions heard it on the radio. Listener surveys showed response from fans in 538 counties in 20 states and Canada. In its first 20 years, mail was received every week, numbering in the thousands of pieces from almost every state in the nation. Helping to spread the word of the Jamboree were the Jamboree's cast of regular entertainers who traveled far and wide, making personal appearances. In the early 1950s, it was popular for Jamboree entertainers to make personal appearances outside Wheeling on a regular basis. During 1952 alone, Jamboree acts made 761 personal appearances in 436 cities and towns before a combined audience of 536,789 people. In April 1953, the Jamboree was 20 years old. The anniversary celebration was held in May when two special shows were staged at the Virginia Theater. The CBS Radio Network carried the event over its popular radio program, Saturday Night Country Style. For these special shows, the theater was filled to capacity. The fans of the Jamboree had come to town to see their favorite entertainers perform, and performances they saw and heard. The star of the show was native West Virginian Jamboree favorite Hawkshaw Hawkins. His pleasant singing style and magnetic stage personality made the 20th anniversary show something special. Long after Hawkshaw became a national celebrity and a regular member of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, he was remembered for stealing his own show that night. For the 25th anniversary, as had been the case 5 years earlier, the Jamboree was again featured on the CBS show Saturday Night Country Style. That nationwide salute was only part of the acclaim being given the Jamboree. Local publicity honoring the Jamboree and noting its accomplishments came from the Wheeling Intelligencer, the Wheeling News Register, the Martins Ferry Times Leader, and the Pittsburgh Press. Other major publications also spread the word of what had been happening in Wheeling for a quarter of a century. Saluting the Jamboree were Sponsor, a weekly magazine used by TV and radio advertisers. Broadcasting, the trade magazine of the radio industry. Radio TV Mirror, and many other country music magazines. On the occasion of its 25th anniversary celebration, the editors of Esquire magazine commissioned distinguished American artist Tom Allen to visit Wheeling and to capture forever the nostalgia of the show that had done so much for lovers of country music. By this time, 2 million fans had come to Wheeling, and the Jamboree was finally recognized by city officials for providing the city with millions of dollars of consumer trade, as well as publicity and inestimable promotion value. West Virginia's governor at the time was Cecil H. Underwood, who added his praise by saying the WWVA Jamboree is the most imitated show of its kind in the country, an American institution, and a listening habit. Following the 25th anniversary, the Jamboree continued to grow in popularity, in stature, and in effectiveness. In 1958, the Jamboree Harvest Home Festival featured a new twist, a hula hoop contest. The winner was a youngster who was awarded a brand new bicycle by Crazy Elmer. More than 3,000 persons attended that night's performance in the Capitol Theater. The big guest star, again, was Hawkshaw Hawkins. The following year saw Doc Williams named Master of Ceremonies of the Jamboree. Early in 1959, Doc took over the MC reins from veteran entertainer and longtime Jamboree MC Hard Rock Gunter. The 1950s featured one of the most popular groups ever to be associated with the Jamboree, the Sunshine Boys, outstanding exponents of gospel music. The group, organized in 1941, was to become one of the most popular attractions ever heard on WWVA. According to an article published by Storer Broadcasting, then owners of WWVA and Jamboree, the Sunshine Boys had played in 19 movies, appeared on several television shows, and had been responsible for keeping thousands of radios tuned to WWVA. The Sunshine Boys also hold the record for the largest number of gospel recordings sold of a particular song, their recording of Peace in the Valley. Yes, the Jamboree had long been a listening habit. On April 30th, 1963, the Jamboree observed 30 years of musical entertainment. Featured on this performance as a special event saluting the state of West Virginia's centennial celebration were Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper and the Jamboree's beloved Big Slim, the Lone Cowboy. As the Jamboree's popularity continued to grow, officials of WWVA Radio realized that country music was truly an important part of life. On November 8, 1965, WWVA became a full-time modern country radio format. The importance of country music to the lives of Americans from all walks of life was shown on January 15, 1966, when the Jamboree moved to Wheeling Downs Exposition Hall for a special Jamboree headlined by Buck Owens. It was a benefit for the Heart Association, and more than 5,600 fans braved a near blizzard to take their seats inside the hall, helping to raise more than $7,500 for the Heart Fund. Still without growing pains, the Jamboree's voices became stronger in the late 1960s. As its fame spread, a nationally known list of artists including Tex Ritter, Jimmy Newman, Connie Smith, Bill Anderson, Marty Robbins, Dave Dudley, Johnny Cash, Ferlin Husky, Stonewall Jackson, Skeeter Davis, and a host of other country artists started performing on a regular basis in Wheeling. The significance of the Jamboree to country music was dramatically shown by Webb Pierce, who on December 7, 1968, headlined a benefit Jamboree with all proceeds going to the Wheeling Jaycees to help finance their annual underprivileged children's Christmas party and shopping tour. Throughout the late 1960s, something was being felt in country music, but even Jamboree artists couldn't quite tell what the feeling was. It wouldn't go away, however, and growing stronger, finally burst forth with greater enthusiasm and quality in the 1970s. After all these years, country music had finally arrived. It arrived largely because of the influence of the Jamboree. The list of artists playing the Wheeling Jamboree was an impressive who's who of country music. The Jamboree cast included Doc and Chicky Williams, Mac Wiseman, Lee Moore, Crazy Elmer, Kenny Roberts, Shot Jackson, Les Severs, Marion Martin, Bob Gallion, Kay Kemmer, George Adams, Skinny Clark, Jimmy Stevens, Smokey Pleacher, the Blue Ridge Quartet, Darnell Miller, Mary Lou Turner, Marty Martell, Helen and Billy Scott, Junior Norman, Karen McKenzie, Gus Thomas, Don Geralds, Teenie Chenault, Patty Powell, the Boys from Shiloh, the Stone Mountain Boys, Jesse Smith, Charlie Waller, Eddie Adcock, the Country Gentlemen, Jim Inams, and Shenandoah Valley Cut-Ups. They were there every week, and their following of fans grew in leaps and bounds. As the Jamboree continued to grow, its guest list of entertainers continued growing too. There were Buck Owens, Merle Haggard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Cal Smith, Conway Twitty, Kenny Price, Jimmy Martin, Dick Curlis, Roy Acuff, Johnny Paycheck, Kenny Rogers, Porter Wagner, Dolly Parton, Sonny James, Hank Williams Jr., Lefty Frizzell, Wilma Burgess, Ferlin Husky, David Houston, Carl and Pearl Butler, Jack Green, and Mel Tillis. They called the Jamboree their second home. As the entertainment improved, the crowds got bigger and bigger. Every country music entertainer who ever donned the cloak of respectability in the music business played the WWVA Jamboree. Each Jamboree performance was as fresh as a new dawn, but as stable as yesterday. The secret of its success lay in the Jamboree's honest approach to giving the country music fans what they wanted: good country music. Throughout the days of modern country music, the Jamboree cast included popular singers like Slim Leehart, Ray Kirkland, Susie and Beverly, the Heckles, Johnny Russell, Kenny Biggs, Bud Cutright, George Elliott, Sabrina Marie, Jimmy Gately, Kevin Mabry, and Liberty Street, Joey Ross, the Cochran Family, Leon Douglas, Cindy Ritter, Lionel Cartwright, and the New Generation Express. The Jamboree is today firmly nestled in the home where it began 50 years ago. In 1969, the Capitol Theater was renamed the Capitol Music Hall. It was completely refurbished, remaining West Virginia's largest and most beautiful theater. The Music Hall has opened its doors to over 5 million visitors during the past 50 years. Like the gracious lady that she is, she always welcomes back those who have made regular visits to Wheeling as a part of their lives. It could be that the founders of Jamboree USA are still looking for the reason that made the Jamboree an instant success some 50 years ago. If so, all they need to do is listen. Country music is demanding to be heard. It's America's music. It's the heart and soul of a nation singing and longing to be heard. Jamboree USA is one of its driving forces and one of its strongest voices. The names who appeared on the Jamboree in the early days have helped build the foundation that has become a tradition. While the late 1960s saw some of the biggest names in country music playing the Jamboree, the 70s brought record crowds to the Capitol Music Hall each Saturday night for a Jamboree USA show, which featured at least one nationally famous artist and a host of regular stars. October 23, 1971 stands alone in the annals of the Jamboree. On that date, an attendance record was set and has yet to be equaled. In his first Wheeling appearance, Charley Pride had an unprecedented 4-show sellout by more than 10,000 country music fans. Having just been named Male Vocalist of the Year and Entertainer of the Year at the annual Country Music Association Awards, Pride deftly displayed the talent that had earned those awards and brought the capacity crowd to its feet during his 4 30-minute performances. Deeply moved by the warm reception he received, Pride thanked his audience, saying, "I've heard about the Wheeling Jamboree and WWVA, and wow, am I ever glad to be here. They've been telling me to come to Wheeling, and now I know why. You're wonderful, and believe me, I'll be back again soon." So impressive was the love and appreciation of the crowds of country music fans that then Wheeling Mayor James Horenzo appeared on stage to present Pride with an honor never before conferred on a country music entertainer: the key to the city of Wheeling. Even the theater welcomed the entertainer in a manner as never before, with the marquee of the Capitol Music Hall heralding his arrival with the slogan, "We have pride in Wheeling." Since that October day 12 years ago, that same slogan has graced the marquee with each of Charley Pride's appearances on Jamboree USA as a reminder of a shining moment in Jamboree history. The proudest moments for Jamboree come when one of her own hits the big time and returns home where it all started. Margot Smith and Mary Lou Turner are just two of the many who know that feeling. Jamboree knows how it feels to offer the help a young artist needs when starting out in the business. It doesn't matter if it's an old-timer, a newcomer, a rising star, or an established superstar. Jamboree USA welcomes them all and is home to them at least once in their career. Today, the lights shine even brighter as every road in the nation leads to the gracious rolling hills of West Virginia, where country music flourishes on the Wheeling Jamboree. Howard Donahoe, Elmer Crow, Big Slim, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and all the greats who called the WWVA Jamboree their home have to be smiling down on her now as she welcomes the stars of today and tomorrow. Tom T. Hall, Charlie Rich, Mickey Gilley, Johnny Lee, Freddie Fender, Glenn Campbell, Dave and Sugar, Billy Crash Craddock, John Conley, Louise Mandrell, Emmylou Harris, Waylon Jennings, all have experienced the Wheeling feeling. That is Jamboree USA, just as the regular hometown members of the Jamboree have for half a century. On December 7, 1982, sadness hit the Jamboree when the country music world lost a friend. Marty Robbins, a man whose career in country music spanned more than 3 decades, succumbed to a heart condition in a Nashville hospital and left the country music industry and Jamboree with a void that can never be filled. Throughout his long career, he appeared many times on Jamboree, usually to sold-out shows. He recorded literally hundreds of singles and albums. 2 of his most memorable songs, El Paso and El Paso City, showcase one of the most beautiful singing voices a man could be blessed with and helped bring fame to that West Texas city. Marty Robbins was a man of many talents: singer, musician, actor, race car driver, and businessman. Few people outside the music industry, however, realize that he was one of the most prolific songwriters of our time, having penned more than 400 songs. Robbins is also recognized as one of the pioneers of crossover music, music that climbed the charts in both contemporary and country, for his recording of A White Sport Coat. With 2 Grammy Awards, 25 BMI citations, induction into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the Country Music Association's Hall of Fame, Robbins' musical output was exceptional, not only in terms of quantity, but quality as well. His range and variety knew no bounds. Marty Robbins was a talented and caring man, a man whose full life made each of us a bit richer for having shared a small part of it. He is a man we will all miss. Jamboree USA's newest, most shining tradition, Jamboree in the Hills. It happens once a year, and it's like magic, like a hit song waiting to be recorded. Jamboree in the Hills started out as a dream. It is the American dream, and like apple pie, became another American tradition. Jamboree in the Hills was faith in country music, faith in its entertainers, and most of all, faith in its fans. Before reality, it was a dream in the mind of Glenn Reeves, the executive director of Jamboree USA in the 1970s. Working with J. Ross Felton, they formulated plans that were soon put on paper and then into motion. It was their idea that a giant country music festival could grow into a tradition, bring the best country music artists together to sing the best country music for the best possible country music fans, and the idea can't miss. Reeves often made that statement. They sought the advice of those they respected in the country music industry. The giants of the country music world gave their support. Johnny Cash said the idea was exciting. Tom T. Hall said it couldn't miss. Others, like Charlie Rich, said they wanted to be part of it. Throughout the early 1970s, Jamboree USA was owned by Columbia Pictures Industries. The top officials of Columbia were consulted, and while at first they were skeptical, the green light flashed. Soon the dream became the plan. Hours upon hours went into the plan before the final picture was drawn. At the time, it seemed like an eternity, but it only took 3 years for the dream to become a working plan that led to Jamboree in the Hills. First, a site was selected. Miles and miles of rolling hills were scoured before Jamboree decided on a location in Belmont County, about 15 miles west of Wheeling. The grounds were landscaped and seated, and the gentle rolling hills soon took on the appearance of an amphitheater. A stage resembling a beautiful red barn was built. Lights were installed, and specially designed sound system was selected for Jamboree in the Hills. Hours faded into days, and days into weeks, and soon it was time to see if dreams really do come true. In July 1977, it was hot. It was scorching hot, but it didn't rain. The weather was another of the fine details studied by Jamboree officials who couldn't leave anything to chance. History was studied. Record books were researched. Weather statistics that had been kept for scores of years were made available to Jamboree officials. It was learned that there is only one weekend each summer that has never seen anything more than a brief shower. The third week in July, Jamboree in the Hills weekend. It may be hot. It may take thousands of gallons of water being sprayed from fire trucks to keep the crowd cool. But that third weekend in July, Jamboree in the Hills weekend, is the only one of the summer when everything becomes a country music fan's dream, and the sun shines on 50,000 fans. For that first Jamboree in the Hills in 1977, more than 25,000 country music fans attended the event that was history in the making. Johnny Cash said his appearance at that first festival was the greatest moment of my life. Other entertainers voiced the same praise. Stars appearing on that first Jamboree in the Hills included such names as Donna Fargo, Freddie Fender, Mickey Gilley, Merle Haggard, Barbara Mandrell, Charlie Rich, Tammy Wynette, along with regulars Crazy Elmer, Dodie Lynn, Skinny Clark, Bob Gallion, and Junior Norman. They all wanted to be invited back. The dream had become a reality. In the summer of 1978, more than 34,000 country music fans attended the second annual Jamboree in the Hills to participate in a happening with Crystal Gayle, Charlie Pride, Roddy Millsap, Barbara Mandrell, Tom T. Hall, Roy Clark, Mel Tillis. Reality was becoming tradition. In just 2 short years, Jamboree in the Hills, the first successful venture of its kind, was receiving praise worthy of a leader. The fans came from every state in the Union and from Canada. The premier event drew the curious and then made them believers. They returned in following years, and they brought their friends. Fans came from England as well as many other foreign countries. They spent 2 days among the Ohio Valley hillsides, cheering, applauding, and dancing. They, the fans, were part of a happening, an event, tradition born from a dream. Jamboree in the Hills had become the country music happening of all time. National television networks sent reporters to cover the event, and they reported to the world that country music thrives at Jamboree in the Hills. The only potential problem those journalists found was providing space for all the world's country music fans who will be attending this event in the future. The show itself, the accommodations, the security, the rolling hills countryside, and fans were impressive to the national reporters. These reporters said the site could easily and comfortably accommodate all the fans who would someday want to be part of Jamboree in the Hills. As the event became more successful, skeptics changed sides. What those skeptics had failed to consider at the outset was the unbeatable combination of more than 50 years of broadcasting heritage that makes WWVA Radio a trusted family friend, and more than 5 million people who have attended the weekly Jamboree show since 1933. Jamboree in the Hills had truly captured the American spirit. The spirit generated by thousands of country music fans in attendance was shared by millions more over radio, television, and through newspaper and magazine coverage of the phenomenon known as the Super Bowl of country music. Behind the scenes, officials worked hundreds of hours putting together the best entertainment available for this great event. These same officials were the ones who labored in the hot summer sun to build a first-class outdoor country music festival. Performers gave their support and spread the word around the world as they entertained friends and fans everywhere. The artists soon found that the Jamboree in the Hills audiences were family to Jamboree USA, and its fans' support that Jamboree officials say is most important to the successful history of Jamboree in the Hills. The fans are the ones who have put it in the history books. They deserve the credit. Jamboree in the Hills is just like the weekly Jamboree show before it grew in size. Subsequent shows starred Johnny Cash, Eddie Rabbitt, Alabama, Roddy Millsap, Jerry Lee Lewis, Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, T.G. Shepherd, Billy Crash Craddock, Tom T. Hall, Maeve Nutter, Larry Gatlin, Donna Fargo. The list is endless. Jamboree in the Hills matured into a major event. It became a happening that the entire country music world looks forward to. It has become the single most important event of the year for thousands of Jamboree faithful. Yes, it has become a tradition in the footsteps of its mother, Jamboree USA. Country music, a tradition. Jamboree USA, where something new is always happening, where stars are born, where they shine. and where new traditions begin. In Wheeling, West Virginia, there is an institution world famous for providing a down-home country music show for the entire family to enjoy. Jamboree USA is an institution from which traditions are born. The world's original WWVA Jamboree is old enough to be celebrating 50 years as a voice strong in rich heritage, but yet young enough to be able to spring into the future with great anticipation of the next Jamboree tradition. As the Jamboree enters its second 50 years, it does so with proud new parents. Price Broadcasting Company of Salt Lake City is carrying on the tradition that has enabled Jamboree USA to celebrate 50 years as a friend to millions of country music fans. The purchase of the Wheeling properties by Price is a renewed faith in the future of WWVA and Jamboree USA. With 50 years to build on, Jamboree USA enters a new era with eyes set on reaching 100. On June 8, 1950, the Wheeling Intelligencer devoted a front-page editorial to the WWVA Jamboree. The column was written by editor of the Intelligencer at the time, Herman Geisk. While Jamboree USA celebrates its 50th anniversary, it seems appropriate to reprint that special editorial. Mr. Geisk said, "The Jamboree has now become a national institution. People of our whole eastern seaboard listen to it and come to Wheeling to see it. From Maine to Florida, even Canada. The eager, animated, keenly intelligent faces of the audience are a show in themselves. You get a glimpse of something at the soul of America. You can feel their deep love for our country, their deep religious instincts, unaffected by time or change. It is nostalgia for old America. The pioneers, the plainsmen, the cowboys, the cabins in the forest, our hills and mountains, our links with the glorious past that can return no more, that casts a spell of enchantment over most people seeing and hearing the Jamboree. It is a living, invigorating institution very close to the heart of America. The Jamboree and the songs of long ago, they will never die." The tribute was a fitting one and seems even more fitting today as 50 years of Jamboree life are remembered and are used to build for the future. May the spirit of Jamboree USA never die as fans continue flocking to Wheeling for weekly performances of the original WWVA Jamboree. May that spirit usher in a continued prosperity to an important way of life. She was born of humble beginnings in the heartland of America. Since 1933, she has offered hope and inspiration. She has become an institution with a proud heritage, and she looks to the future with youthful enthusiasm. The best is yet to come.